Hexavalent Chromium. Purpose. The purpose of the Plaas Incorporated Hexavalent Chromium Safety Program is to protect both our employees and the environment from cadmium contamination from our facility operations. The intent of our program is to be in full continuous compliance with OSHA Standard 29 CFR 1910.1027 and all other local, state, and federal requirements for our industry. Responsibilities. Management will implement, maintain, and monitor effectiveness of entire Hexavalent Chromium Safety Program, including semi-annual revisions and updates to reflect the current status of the program. Engineering and administrative controls for Hexavalent Chromium exposure. Employee training and awareness. Medical surveillance program. Respiratory Protection program. Hexavalent Chromium disposal program. Housekeeping program. Protective clothing issues, storage, and disposal. Supervisors will provide effective and continuous control of all Hexavalent Chromium operations. Immediately inform management of any deficiencies in engineering or administrative controls. Conduct routine assigned inspections and monitoring. Immediately correct any deviation from operational safety requirements. Provide immediate on-the-spot training for any employee who shows lack of knowledge or application of required operational Hexavalent Chromium safety requirements. All employees who have the potential exposure prior to the time of initial job assignment and annually shall be trained. The employee shall be informed of the specific nature of the operations which could result in exposure to Hexavalent Chromium above the action level, the purpose, proper selection, fitting, and use of limitation of respirators, engineering controls, purpose and description of the medical surveillance program, and the medical removal program. Employees will follow all operational and Hexavalent Chromium safety procedures, seek immediate supervisor guidance to resolve questions, conduct operations in accordance with company-provided training, immediately report to a supervisor any deficiency in engineering or administrative controls, properly use, store, and dispose of issued and assigned personal protective clothing, maintain change and shower areas neat and orderly. Hexavalent Chromium. Hexavalent Chromium is prevalent in the metal fabrication industry. CrVl compounds are most commonly used in the structural and anti-corrosive elements in stainless steel, iron, and steel production, and in welding and painting. Occupational exposures to CrVl can occur from inhaling its mist, such as from chrome plating, dust, including inorganic pigments or CrVl painted surfaces, or fumes, as in stainless steel welding, and from dermal contact. Exposure to CrVl has been linked conclusively to lung cancer, asthma, nasal ulcerations and perforations, skin ulcerations or chrome holes, and allergic and irritant contact dermatitis. Monitoring. Plaas Incorporated shall provide for monitoring or measuring of employee exposure. Periodic monitoring shall be conducted at least every 6 months if initial monitoring shows employee exposure. Air monitoring will be performed at the beginning of each job task. If exposure monitoring results indicate exposure is above the PEL, Plaas Incorporated shall include in written notification the corrective action being taken to reduce exposure to or below the PEL. Exposure determination. Plaas Incorporated shall ensure their employees are not exposed in excess of the permissible exposable level PEL. Plaas Incorporated shall determine the 8-hour TWA exposure for each employee exposed to CrVl. Plaas Incorporated will choose between a scheduled monitoring option and a performance-based option for making exposure determinations when there is potential for exposure to Hexavalent Chromium or at or above the action level. The action level is set at 1/2 of the PEL, or 2.5 micrograms per cubic meter of air, calculated as an 8-hour TWA. Because employee exposure to airborne concentrations of CrVl are variable, workers may sometimes be exposed above the PEL even if exposure samples, which are not conducted on a daily basis, generally are below the PEL. Maintaining exposures below the action level provides increased assurance that employees will not be exposed to CrVl at levels above the PEL because of exposure variations in the workplace. Regulated areas. Plaas Incorporated will establish a regulated area whenever an employee's exposure to airborne concentrations of CrVl or can be reasonably expected to be is in excess of the PEL. Plaas Incorporated shall ensure that regulated areas are demarcated from the rest of the workplace in a manner that adequately establishes and alerts employees of the boundaries of the regulated area. Methods of compliance. Plaas Incorporated shall implement engineering and work practice controls to achieve the PEL or the lowest levels of feasibility achievable. This includes ventilation systems, material substitution, or work practice modifications. Wherever feasible, engineering and work practice controls are not sufficient to reduce employee exposure to or below the PEL, the employer must provide respiratory protection. Plaas Incorporated will not rotate employees to different jobs to achieve compliance with the PEL. Plaas Incorporated shall implement effective engineering and work practice controls if the exposure level is above the permissible limit for more than 30 days per year. Respiratory protection. Plaas Incorporated shall provide respiratory protection for employees during periods necessary to install or implement feasible engineering and work practice controls. Work operations such as maintenance and repair activities for which engineering and work practice controls are not feasible. Work operations where controls are not sufficient to reduce exposures to or below the PEL. Work operations where employees are exposed above the PEL for fewer than 30 days per year, and the employer has elected not to implement engineering and work practice controls to achieve the PEL. Emergencies. Protective work clothing and equipment. Where a hazard is present or is likely to be present from skin or eye contact with CRVL, Plaas Incorporated shall provide appropriate personnel protective clothing and equipment at no cost to employees, and it shall ensure that employees use such clothing and equipment. In addition, a stringent program will be developed for removing, handling, and cleaning contaminated clothing and equipment. Housekeeping and hygiene. All surfaces must be maintained free of accumulations of CRVL, and all spills and releases of CRVL containing material must be cleaned up promptly. Dry shoveling, sweeping, and brushing may be used only when HEPA-filtered vacuuming or other methods that minimize the likelihood of exposure to CRVL have been tried and found ineffective. Effective wet shoveling, sweeping, and brushing are allowed. The use of compressed air to remove CRVL when no alternative method is feasible, but only when used with a ventilation system designed to capture the dust cloud created by the compressed air. Waste, scrap, debris, and other materials contaminated with CRVL and consigned for disposal shall be collected and disposal of in labeled, sealed, impermeable bags or containers. Plaas Incorporated shall provide washing facilities in areas where skin contact with CRVL can occur and ensure that employees use them as needed. Medical surveillance. Medical surveillance is required for employees who experience signs or symptoms of the adverse health effects associated with CRVL exposure or those exposed in an emergency. Emergency means any unexpected and significant release of CRVL, such as equipment failure, rupture of containers, and failure to control equipment. Plaas Incorporated shall make medical surveillance available at no cost to the employee and at a reasonable time and place for all employees who are occupational exposed to CRVL at or above the action level of 30 or more or more days a year, experiencing signs or symptoms of the adverse health effects associated with CRVL exposure, exposed in an emergency. Hazard training and communication. Plaas Incorporated shall provide initial training prior to or at the time of initial assignment. Plaas Incorporated shall provide training that is understandable and ensure each employee can demonstrate knowledge of the health hazards associated with hexavalent chromium exposure, location, manner of use, and release of chromium in the workplace, engineering controls and work practice controls, purpose, proper selection, fitting, proper use and limitations of respirators and protective clothing, emergency procedures, measures employees can take to protect themselves from exposure, purpose and description of medical surveillance program, contents of the standard. Plaas Incorporated shall make a copy readily available without cost to all affected employees. Training shall be documented. Plaas Incorporated shall ensure that each employee can demonstrate knowledge of the contents of this standard and the purpose and a description of the medical surveillance program required by this standard. In addition, Plaas Incorporated shall provide a copy of this standard to all affected employees. Changing and hygiene facilities. Plaas Incorporated shall provide change rooms for decontamination and ensure facilities prevent cross-contamination. Washing facilities should be readily accessible for removing chromium from the skin. Workers must wash their hands and face and any other potentially exposed skin before eating, drinking, or smoking.